Hi, I'm Danny, and today I will be sharing with you my top 20 bookish wish list, I guess you could call it. I am only going to be naming books that I can remember off the top of my head because I have an entire book full of book names that I could recite to you, but it's like kind of like you have to research this book, like what was that book about? So I'm going to name the top 20 books that I can think of off the top of my head that I am looking the most forward to. The first book I want to get I just recently heard about, and it is like my geek girl dream come true, and that is Doctor Who Time Lord Fairy Tales. They are basically it's basically a book full of fairy tales that Time Lord children were told as they grew up, like Snow White and the 7 Keys of Doomsday and stuff like that. So if you know me, I love Doctor Who. I've got a few books from Doctor Who on my shelf. I have I have a few posters, and I even have a TARDIS cookie jar. And of course all my Doctor Who jewelry. So I've got quite a few Doctor Who things, and this is just like my fangirl dream. But this is what it looks like. It looks gorgeous, and this picture is completely throwing off my white balance. Since most of the books I plan to show you are going to be on this, I'm probably going to have a lot of white balance issues, so I am sorry. Next is Sweet Evil. This is the first book from the Sweet Evil trilogy, I think, and it is by Wendy Higgins, I believe. Sweet Evil by Wendy Higgins. Now, from what I understand of the summary, this is basically about the children of gods. So again, Greek mythology, you know I love it. And from what I understand, they have to kind of work for their parents, I think. Like if your mother or father is the god of adultery, then you have to sleep with married people and break up marriages, I think. It's something along those lines, but everyone seems to love it and it sounds really interesting, so I want to read it. Okay, for my next book, it is Firewalker by Josephine Angeli. And can we just take a moment to admire this beautiful cover? Okay, enough admiring. This is the sequel to Trial by Fire, the second book in the trilogy, and I am afraid I cannot give you a summary on this book, for it would spoil the first book. And I have not read it, but I still want the sequel because it's beautiful. Next is The Fairy Keeper by Amy Bierce, I think is how her last name is pronounced. I could be wrong. Now, from what I remember of this summary, this is about a girl who is born with the ability to see and communicate with fairies, and then suddenly one day her fairies go missing. And that just somehow drew me in. Plus Ben at Benjamin and Tomes, I'll link his channel below, he raves about this book, and he seemed to like a lot of the same books I do, and he's got some great recommendations, so I want to read this one. Next is a comic book, and that is Ms. Marvel. From what I remember of this book, it is basically Mr. Marvel, but what if Mr. Marvel was a girl? It's basically pretty much it. And not only is she a girl, but she is Muslim, I believe. I'm not quite sure on her nationality though, so I could be wrong, I could be right. We'll see. Next is White Hot Kiss by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And from what I remember of this book, it is about a 17-year-old girl named Layla who is part guardian and part demon. And guardians, I believe, are supposed to be gargoyles. So she's part gargoyle and part demon, and she hunts demons with her gargoyle family. But she also has a demon power, which is to suck out souls. And she can feel people's souls. And so the problem for Layla is anytime she kisses a person, she has the ability to suck out their soul, which means she has never kissed a boy. And she has a crush on a gargoyle boy, and I believe she's also has feelings for a demon boy, and she can kiss this demon boy, but of course, again, demon, natural enemy, she's not supposed to be romantically involved with, and so you could imagine that causes some problems. Next, I have Hidden Wings by Camille Renee. Again, could be wrong with the name. And this is about a girl, I cannot remember her name, and she is the sole survivor in a car crash that killed not only her 2 parents, but I believe her brother also. And she has to move into Alaska with her aunt, I believe it is. And there she finds out that everything is not quite as it seems, and she finds out some sort of hidden secret about her family. And so it sounds really interesting, and with the whole wings thing, I'm imagining she might be a fairy, and so I'm kind of interested in seeing and finding out. Again, this was also recommended by Ben at Benjamin Tomes. I'll get his name right in the description and link his channel below. Next, I have Some Girls Bite by Chloe Neal. From what I understand of this book, this is a book about vampires who live in Chicago, finally come out of the coffin, I believe is the expression, and they announce to the entire world that they are real, and they start living among society. And this girl gets attacked by a rogue vampire, I believe, and then she ends up being turned by the master vampire of Chicago. And it's just about her whole life as not only adjusting to vampire life, but I believe learning fighting or something like that. But I wanted this book for quite a few years, and as I was going through that book I was telling you about, full of just book titles and names, I was scratching out a whole bunch of books that I just have no interest in reading anymore because my taste has evolved. And that was one of the books that still stuck out that I absolutely still wanted to read, and so I added it to my top list. Next I have Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is, from what I have heard everyone talk about, non-spoiler of course, think the Italian Job just set in the Grisha world. And I have been wanting to read the Grisha books, but this one sounds a little more up my alley. Next is Illuminate by Amy Kaufman. This book is pretty much just shrouded in mystery. I'm told the entire book is told, instead of being told from a certain person's perspective, it is all told through emails and confidential files, and that just sounds fascinating. I am told that it is a science fiction, so I'm a little iffy on that, but I still do want to read this. Next is Storm Siren by Amy Weber. Beautiful cover, and I believe this is the first book in a trilogy, although I could be wrong. This is about a world where elementals are only supposed to be male, and all the males are killed at birth. This girl is a female siren, and she has the power of electricity, I believe, and she has killed all her previous masters by accident because she does not know how to use her powers. And one day she is up on a stage at an auction being sold again, and something happens and she kills somebody in the crowd, and somebody else buys her, and he offers her a choice. He can either kill her or teach her how to use her magic, and of course she chooses how to use her magic. And so that sounds really awesome. I love characters that aren't supposed to be what they are actually turn out to be, and so it sounds awesome. I want to read it, and that's the whole point of this video. I want to read every book. Why do I keep saying it? Now this book I actually ran across at Barnes & Noble a few weeks ago, and I saw it. I'm like, whoa, what the heck is that? And then I saw the title. I'm like, oh, it's got to be a spoof, but it turns out it's actually not a spoof, and I just saw the book trailer, and it is Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. That is basically just Pride and Prejudice told, but in a world full of zombies. I tried to read Pride and Prejudice and it was just a little too slow for me, but I did love the movie, and I am so looking forward to reading the book and seeing the movie. Next is a book I have a real problem pronouncing, so I'm just going to link it below with all the rest of the books. And it is basically just a book that it can pretty much be made into like a book tag book. It is just full of all sorts of different subjects for books for you to write in, like your top favorite books, and books that have a supernatural twist to it or whatever, and it sounds awesome. It is not a book actually for reading, it's more like a book for fun, I guess you could say. And I have been looking for it for years, and they finally brought it back into stock into most stores, so I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it. But right now it is about $17, so I'm waiting for Black Friday before I grab it. The next book is the sequel to The Secret Diamond Sisters, and that is Diamonds in the Rough. It is just the sequel to The Diamond Sisters, and I have not even read a summary on this book because I just want to go into it not knowing anything. Next is YOLO Juliet. This is a book told through texting. You know, emojis, short texts, and basically everything. Just think of Romeo and Juliet told in text form through the entire play. I read a few pages of it and it looks hilarious, especially to see the emojis and things you would not think were used for certain things said in an old language. But it looked hilarious and I just gotta read it. Next is Inland by Kate Rosefield. This is about a girl whose mother either committed suicide by walking into the ocean or she drowned, and her father moves her inland to help her get over her grief, and years later they end up moving back and she starts hearing a call from the ocean. Now it is unclear whether she is just psychologically hearing this call or she is literally hearing a call from the ocean. So it is kind of a, is she crazy or is the ocean really calling her kind of thing. And so it sounded really interesting, and You guessed it, I just had to read it. Next is Dead House, and I cannot remember the author of this book, but I will link it below. But just like Illuminate, this book is also told from files and emails and even interviews. This book is about a girl who has a split personality. I believe in the daytime she is Kathy, and at nighttime she is Katie. And I'm guessing maybe she murdered somebody or went a little crazy, but either way, this book also sounds really fascinating from the way it is told. Next is Dorothy Must Die by Daniel Page. This is basically a retelling of Wizard of Oz. What had happened if Dorothy had left Oz, but also come back, not only killed the wizard, but now she's taken over and everything is just terrible from the sound of the description of this book. And the witches have taken another girl from Kansas and brought her to Oz to kill Dorothy, because the witches are part of a revolution trying to put Oz back the way it was. And it sounds pretty good. I'm not quite sure if this is definitely not going to be on like the top of my list, but it is still on a list that I really want to read. I can't think of any more books. Oh, yes, there's this book is basically another retelling of 1,000 Arabian Nights, but this one you do not know the main character's name supposedly through the entire book. Even in the summary, it does not give the character's name. So this sounds really interesting, and I enjoyed Wrath of the Dawn, and so I want to read this one. Next, I have Silent Echoes. I cannot remember the author for this book either, but it is basically about a mute girl who suddenly finds that she can sing, and I believe she is supposed to be a siren. And so it sounded, again, really good. That is my top 20 bookish wish list. I will see you guys next week. Bye!